Hello, I'm Mark, and welcome to the fifth and final part of my Unreal Engine tutorials on how to build an asynchronous and data-driven dialogue system for your Unreal Engine games. So let's do a quick little recap of the last four parts. So in part one, we went ahead and defined all of our data structures, as seen here. And then in part two, we went ahead and created our interface that will be going on to all the entities that are going to be ORTA compliant. We created our base class for the orator, which carries all the common functionality that will be used between the player orator and the AI orator. And then we'll created a orator base widget that we can use to send information from the player orator up to the UI, so we can kind of see dialogue and get those dialogue choices. Again, those were all abstracts and base classes. And then in part three, we went ahead and created the concretes version of the orator component. So we created the player flavor as well as the AI flavor. And then we went ahead and integrated those as well as in part three using the orator interface on the entities as seen here. We went ahead and integrated those into both the player character, which was created for us by the project, and then we went ahead and created just a simple little demo AI character and integrated the AI version into that. Then in part four, we went ahead, I'm just going to go and minimize this, and built out our widget as seen here. So this will allow us to make choices but also see the dialogue speech depending on which mode it's in, and again that's all controlled by the player orator component. And then we went ahead and added our code, so we created a simple little interaction system here so that we can interact with other orators so that we can get those speech dialogues. And then we also wired up a couple of the events and kind of showed how you could wire things up if you wanted to interrupt and play animations on the player side. Alright, so that was everything up to part four. So part five, we're going to now move over to the AI. We're going to go ahead and start creating our AI blueprints and start setting them up so that they can work with the AI orator. And then once everything's set up there, we'll go ahead and then create a couple of little dialogue scripts, integrate that in, and give it a test. And if everything is set up correctly, we should start to see our player and our AIs in conversation. Alright, so as always, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. Alright, so let's get started by creating our AI blueprint. So what I'm going to do, I did a little bit of pre-prep before this video, so I went ahead and created a folder for NPCs under the content, so under content, NPCs, and within there I just created a folder for Manny and Quinn. Right now they're just empty. I did start adding some dialogue scripts. We will create a couple, but I also added some of the things, and we'll just go over these once we've created our test scripts to kind of show you the different flavors that you could do. But for now, let's go ahead and create our AI character blueprint. So to do that, I'm just going to come up here, go to blueprint class, and let's just minimize this. Let's go ahead and find our AI character class. Let's see, what did we call this? I'm coming back here. Demo AI. So let's find demo AI here. There it is. So this is our custom class for our AIs, which is demo AI. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to say BP underscore Manny. So that's going to be our Manny AI. And as you can see right now, when I pull this up, being a character, it's added some things, and then you can also see that there's our orator AI dialogue system, and that's already been now put in there for us as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and save that. Alright, so to finish this off, since this is just an AI, we don't need cameras or camera booms, but we do need a skeletal mesh. So let's go find our skeletal mesh, and we should have a simple mani right there. So there's our simple mani. And as far as an animation class, I'm just going to come down here. Unreal Engine's created like one for combat, one for platforming, one for side scrolling, but I'm just going to take this one here, which is unarmed. I'm just going to grab that. And let's move this -89 down into the capsule and rotate this by about 90 degrees negative. So it's looking in the right direction. So we'll save that. All right, so that is actually all we need to do as far as setting this up. So it's now linked to the animation. We've got the right mannequin in there. So as you can see, this is AI, so there's no UI component. And we'll get to the dialogue a little bit later, but here's our here's our table selection right now. These are just quests, so we need the topic to go into there. All right, so let's go into the event graph and start wiring things up there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the orator. I'm going to open up the events, and I'm going to go find there's only 3 events that I'm going to be using within this blueprint. I've got the interrupt speaker event. I'm also going to add the response action. So these are the actions. And then we've also got on speaker action too. So on speaker action. All right, so those are the action event. Those are the 3 action events that we've added, and those are part of the, if I bring this up and bring back the orator component, that's the suite right here. So this is all done internally. We did that in the blueprint in the C++. So now we're just interested in these 3 actions here, because this is the stuff that's going to bubble back up to the character based on the dialogue. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and move that to the back. All right, so the first one, let's get started with response action. So I'm just going to move this around, since response action is going to be a little bit big. And we don't need actually those 3, so I'm just going to remove those. So this is our response action. So this is the action that happens in the state machine when we say our piece, the dialogue ends, and we require an action to be taken. So from here, I'm just going to go and pull this off, and I'm going to say switch. And this is going to give us an orator enumerated switch. And again, these are the states. So on action, we pass a state in that is currently being selected, right? So, and this is coming off the response. So now we can take an action. So we have the ability to do a start new topic. So we can come up here, and I'm just going to say print string for now. So this is where we would then, if this AI was responsible for starting a new topic, this is where it would happen. Start new topic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little delay here of about 1 second. That way, and the idea here is this just makes, when we start a new topic, we want to make sure that everyone has exited out of the conversation first before we go through the topic start sequence. And then within the character itself, we added a function called start new topic. So in this character, and as part of demo character right here, if I just double click on this, it'll allow us to get there quick. There it is. So now that's what we're calling. So every time we do, if this entity is responsible for starting it, it will then go ahead and start it for us. All right, so that's happening there. If this is just an exit strategy, then we're just going to say, come up here and we'll just say print string. So if this entity is exiting, then I'm going to say exit conversation, so we'll just exit out here, and this is just a general exit. Versus if we're going into questing, then we're probably going to want to come out to here. So this would be, I'm just going to copy this. So if we were questing, this would be your start quest, and this would be exiting out into your rewards. So this would be where you would exit out, and if you had a quest, however you're updating the quest log in the player, this is where you'd go ahead and do it, handing out the quest to the player so that they could go ahead and do what they need to do. So and this would be hand in quest. And get the rewards. So that's what we've done there. And then if you had a trading network, if you needed to swap gear, you'd come out here and and do whatever you need to do here. And again, if you wanted to open up, you wanted to buy and sell stuff from you could go here. And again, I'm just wiring up based on this, but again, you could reassign these. If, say, this isn't the quest giver, but you want to reassign it, you could go ahead and do that. So this is swap gear. Buy and sell. All right, and then this again would all go into whatever. Again, this is how you could integrate this into other systems, which could be on your AI, coming from your dialog. And if you need more, you can just add more enumerators into your exit state in the C++, and then that would open up more options. We don't do anything on continue because this is really just this is a response action. There's really nothing to be done on continue. Unless you really wanted to do something on continue, I suppose. But yeah, we'll just leave that one empty. All right, so next we need a way to start the conversation. Actually, let's go ahead and finish up these other states first, and then we'll go into the conversation, start the conversation. So that is the response. And again, I just put these there so you can kind of get a feel for how that works. So as far as the interrupt speaker action, so all this is going to do is we're going to again bring this out, go to switch. And then if you had a montage that you needed to stop, if you're going to be skipping or aborting, this is how, you just come out and we would just say get current dialogue. So this is the current dialogue, and I can go ahead and just break this, and here we have the current dialogue options. So I'm just going to do that, and maybe just do that. Right, and then if it's an animation or if it's an audio, we can just come up, I'm just going to break this, and there's our montage. I would probably want to do it is valid, just to make sure that we've got a valid one, this is a valid pointer. And then from here, you could do a skip. And I would probably do the same thing for an abort. So I'm going to come here and just do this, put the two in. And then on a skip, this is where you just say go ahead and stop the montage. And then once we stop the montage, and the reason why I split this out is because we're probably going to want to, you'd want to do two different things based on whether it's a skip or whether it's an abort. If it's a skip, which is the top one, we would probably want to go ahead and do this and say just end speak, which would then call the end speak function. We'd stop any montage and just automatically tell it to just continue to go to end speak, versus if it's an abort, we're going to go and call in end this conversation instead, which is going to tell everybody to abort the conversation completely. So just two little paths, but that's kind of the idea. Again, I'm not supporting it in this video, but if you want to try and play it, that's kind of how you do it. And then lastly, we have on speaker action. So this is the action that we need to take, regardless of this being a animation or not. So I'll just go ahead and run this. So what we would do here, I'm just going to say get this guy, which is our AI dialog, say get interrupt state. So I'm going to test for the interrupt state up front. So if there's an interruption, right, this would stop anything which is animated. But if we need to stop anything that doesn't have the ability to be, you know, like a sound or a dialogue, right? What we need to do is we need to try and say, okay, well, we'll try and abort it before, or we'll try and abort it at the end and find the right path, because they're not running asynchronously, or they're running asynchronously, but we don't have any way to kind of interrupt that as easily. But for now, I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to say switch. So again, I'm going to do a quick little test on the abort switch, you know, just to see if there is. And now this is where I can also use none. So if it's none, so since I'm using rolling dialogue, I'm going to use a delay on the rolling dialogue. And from there, again, I can pull out this guy. Just going to copy that and bring that down here. Speaker duration is what we're setting as a default. So for rolling dialogue, or if I needed to delay something while the dialogue is rolling, I can do it here. If there is an animation, I'll kind of temporarily hook this up. But since we don't have one, I'm not gonna. So if I do this, actually, you know what? I'm gonna put a branch in here. Branch, and on animation, let's go ahead and break that out. And I'm gonna do a is valid, but I'm actually going to run the is valid function and put that in there. So, and if we do have a valid animation, then we would then go ahead and run the montage. And we just call that, and again, you could then put that in there. We would need the skeletal mesh. If you've got a starting position, you'd use the starting position. If you're using a starting section, you could use the starting section. We could just hook all that up there. And then that's what you could do. And then off here, you've got your and then we got on notify end, which would then go to, actually, let's go get that component first. So again, here we would do an end speak. So end speak is what we call when we want to actually, and this will then send the communication out to all the entities that are listening that that this part of the conversation is over, and the next person in the queue can start to speak. But I can do that. I can also listen on the interrupt and on the notify as well. And then if there is no animation, and I'm not going to use any animations here, so we're just going to come down to here, and actually we're just going to go straight into that. So if there's no animation, we don't need to wait. We already have a delay. Actually, let's break this link, break this, break that. If none, otherwise. There we go. So if it's just regular dialogue, I'm just going to do this animation here, and that will go off the speaker duration. Down there. So if I have an animation, we'll take the animation. If there's no animation, then we'll just treat it as just regular dialogue, and it should then go into the delay, and that delay is coming off whatever's in the script, and then from there we'll determine how we want to end the speaker action, so it all comes back to there. And then again, if we have an abort, right, then it's just running the same thing as we would do over here. Since the animation hasn't started yet, I can just go ahead and tell it to either skip or abort right there. Most likely on this one, it would probably just come straight to here. But if we have a skip and abort and we have a dialogue, we need to be able to set this here, because this is reliant on animations. I suppose I could change that. No, I think we'll be good for now. You could also put an end speak regardless, but again, it would be determining whether you're on abort or on speak. But that's kind of the idea that you might want to use. All right, so that should set it up for the three events, right? So we have the event based here, and I've set this up for topic switching, and then we've got on speak, which is the most important, because this is going to tell us to push the conversation forward. Actually, no, on speak here, which is going to be pushing the conversation forward, and this is the on interrupt. Providing we have stop animation if we're using montages. Otherwise, we'll check here and if as well. So if the montage is already started, then this would happen. Technically, the text would roll, but as soon as it goes to end speak and it goes to the next person would pick up, because this is again being broadcast to everybody, and then the next person in the speaking chain would just block it and do whatever they need to do there. So all right, so that's set up. So then the only other things we need to do here is we need to have a way of taking the interaction and then starting the conversation. So since we want this class to be interactable, we are going to need to add a interface to this. So we created an interface in part 4, which is the BPI interactions. So I'm gonna so now that we've added, we can add this interface to our class here, and we can now use that interface. to help to get things kicked off. So that's the interface call, but the interface is needs to kick things off. So what I can do here, I'm just going to keep this simple, and we're just going to drag right off, and I'm going to create a start. So we have start group conversation by IDs, and this is again one of those functions that we defined on our character class, on our AI character class. So here it is, start conversation by IDs. So we're going to be calling this function here, and this function is going to then to kick off the group conversation. So I'm going to come back, and for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and put this in for now so that it's already there. So this will go ahead, we'll be recreating the rhyme conversation, so we'll start that off. And so what we do is we'll start the conversation by IDs, and then if we needed to, we could then set a UI mode if you wanted to set the UI mode, but I'm just going to keep that for now. All right, so, and again, this is the topic ID, and then this is the rhyme. And this information can come from anywhere. If you had a questing system, or a questing system, it could come from there. It could just come based on, it could come from multiple places on how you want to start things. All right, so I think that should do it for our AI for Manny. I think we only need, nope, we need to do one more thing, and we need to give Manny a name. So let's find there it is, and we'll call this Manny, and hit compile and save. All right, so in order to do Quinn, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to say duplicate, and I'm just going to call this one Quinn. And I'm just going to go ahead and move Quinn to our own folder. And I'm just going to use simple Quinn. All the other data and everything else stays the same. All right, so there's Manny, there's Quinn, and identical setup. The only difference here is just going to be the data. And so if I go ahead into my other, if I try and reproduce what I had in the other one, it would be a different topic and a different starting point. And again, this will make sense when we get to actually creating these scripts out. All right, so that should do it for our characters. So now we've got Manny, we've got Quinn. So all's left is for us to go ahead and create some dialogues, and then hook those into the third person Manny and Quinn, and things should start to come to life. Okay, first thing, let's go ahead. Before we just do that real quick, I think I forgot to set Quinn's name. We're going to need this. So let's find AI data. That's actually going to be under here. So yeah, so this is in Quinn, so it's set to Manny, so let's set it to Quinn real quick. So that's the name that we want to pass back during the dialogue sequence. All right, so now we've got Manny and Quinn and our player. So let's see what we got here. Oh, wrong one. Put that in the details. Oh, do I not have that set to read and write? Let's just do a quick little check. AI player. Oh, that's read only. No, it's read only, visible anywhere, player data. Let's check my character. There we go, edit defaults only. Just changing this tag on the player to edit defaults only blueprint instead of AI. I'm going to call this player. That way we can change it. If it's visible, then it's just visible, but we need to make it editable. So visible just means you can see it. Editable means you can go ahead and edit the defaults within the blueprint. So I'm just going to make that small little change. So we'll just move this off screen. Actually, just move it to the back of the screen. And I'm just going to go ahead and close all this. Let's just do a quick little compile, make that small little change. Alright, cool. And let's go back to the blueprint for the character. And now if I say player data, there it is, and we'll call this the player. Alright, compile, save. Alright, so let's get started with data. So like I said, I went ahead and started building some of these out, but I'm going to go ahead and but I kind of left out the rhyme because I think that one's the more interesting one since it kind of goes between multiple people, so or multiple entities. So we'll go ahead and build that one out. So I'm going to start off with the player first, and I'm going to come into player scripts. And so the way this works is these are all just little data tables. So I'm going to right click and go to miscellaneous, and I'm going to come down to data table, and under here we can find a table that we need. So we created ours under orator, and since this is the player, we want the orator player response row. So this is the data table that we're going to use for players. I'm just going to call it orator. We'll call it player intro. All right, so that's the orator player intro, and I'm just going to open this up. So when we open this up, we've created the data table structure, so we just need to add a row. And I'm just going to, we need to, again, everything here is based on IDs, and the row IDs are kind of how we, our state machine in the conversation will work. So we're passing along these row IDs so that we can continue to move the conversation forward or backwards or wherever it needs to go, right, within the conversation state. All right, so once we have this, we have responses as well as a couple of little queues here. So if I open up the response, right, and this is where we've got our structured data. We have our response choice text here. If we wanted to have dialogue lines, we could have dialogue lines too. If we had, say, some animation, we wanted to have more of an animated response, and you wanted to also have the dialogue lines show up, you could add the lines here and sync that to the response a bit more. But for this demo, we're really just gonna, I'm just gonna use rolling dialogue. Oh, and I'm just going to use regular, just responses. So I'm going to put I like lamb sandwiches as one of the responses. The other response is going to be what a a-hole. And then the third response, and again these are just arrays, is going to be let's make a deal. So this is the response text that's going to show up in our widget when we flip to that flip it into response mode. And each of these responses is going to have and then this is the state machine package, right? This is when we make this, then we need to go and say, well, how do we want to progress the conversation? So on I like lamb sandwiches, it's actually going to be a queue to switch the topic, right, and go into the questing topic. And I've actually got that pre-made here, and we can walk through that a little bit later. But the idea being is that then that goes into a completely different conversation, and this is where we would then do the topic switch. So that's one, and then we have the exit. So this is then going to go to this, and so the way that this is going to work is that I'm not going to have the last word when I exit. Instead, I'm going to continue, throw it back to Manny, and Manny will have the last word in this conversation. So that's why I have continue. Otherwise, if you just wanted to exit, you could just hit exit and it will just tell everybody to terminate the conversation as soon as it hits Manny, and then there is no dialogue. And then we've got the show store, which is let's make a deal, and again we just need to put the IDs. So these IDs will map to the ID in the corresponding entity's row name here. This will map to the corresponding entity's row name in the topic table, and we'll create that for this character right after we're done with this. And again, we've got the states. Are we continuing, starting new topic, or are we going to be exiting out into whatever we need to exit out into? All right, so that should do it for the player, right? So now we need to have a way of hooking all of these conversations into the player, and that is done. Let's just through the topics table. So as you can see here, orator topics table. So we need to go create a topics table now. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to come up one into the dialogs under orator dialog, and I'm going to right click, and again, this is a table, so miscellaneous, data table, and I'm going to say orator, and then this is the orator scripts row, and this is, this table system, right, is common across both AIs and players. So I'm going to hit OK, and this is going to be, I'm going to put a prefix of orator on there so I know what these tables are. This is player specific. And I'm going to say player and topics. And I'm just going to hit save. Or let's open it up and then let's just save it to make sure everything's saved. So this is where we can start outlining the topics. So I actually have 3 topics here for our player. So if I come up and set these, so introductions is the first topic, and that's going to be our rhyme. That's what we're currently working on. I choose when I'm doing row names to keep everything lowercase, and the reason why I do this is because when I went from Pi to actually creating a distributed demo game, and I was using this uppercase, lowercase, didn't seem to translate over. It must have been a bug in the system. So when it was working in Pi, everything worked, but then suddenly everything didn't. I went in and made everything lowercase, and suddenly both the distributed and Pi worked the same. So I thought, after that, I've always kept everything lowercase. Just something to think about. All right, and then I'm just going to fill in these IDs real quick. So that's the sell stuff if I wanted to go into selling, and then I have the Apple's Quest, the ID for the Apple's Quest. So each quest, you'd probably want to have a new ID, and again, this is for every dialogue. So probably your player would have a really long table of all possible dialogues, where your AIs would probably have a much shorter set to choose from. But there are some places where you could just genericize it a bit versus keeping it unique. And I guess not all quests start from dialogues. And there could be other ways that you could start quests as well. So again, Apple's Quest. So for the Apple's Quest, I'm going to set this. I'm just going to go ahead and find. Just going to put in player. So there's the Apple Quest there. Sell stuff. I'm just going to go in and find that subtable. Store. So this is selling stuff. And then finally introductions. I'm just going to say player, and there's intro. And so that's the topics table, and then the topics table just gets put into player topics right there. All right, so next up is going to be the, we'll go ahead and do Manny next. So I'll just keep this orator player intro so we can kind of show how things get mapped. But going into Manny, let's set Manny up. So again, I added the Apple's Quest since Manny's going to be running the Apple's Quest, but the intro I kind of left blank so we can kind of work on this together. So again, I'm just going to come up here, I'm going to go to data table, and here I'm going to say orator, and this is, we want the AI responses. Okay, since Manny is an AI. Orator, Manny. Give it a name so I can find it. All right, so to do this, I'm just going to go ahead and bring up the drawer for Manny. All right, so here, I know I've got 3. So here we're going to have some lines. So because this is a shared conversation, but they're going to go between Manny and Quinn, I'm just going to go ahead and put, so Manny's going to start it. So Manny starts with lines 1. He's also going to go to line 3 in the conversation. And then he's also going to be the one who's going to be respond if I decide to exit out of this topic. So he's responsible for that. And so when we go into the rhyme, I'm just going to set this up. So the first line is going to go from line. So if I'm in, whoops, let's take that out, X. So if I start in line 1, so make sure I've got the line 1 right. We want to go to line 2, and we're going to continue. So we're going to broadcast this out to all 3 entities, to me, Quinn, and if whoever's got this will pick this up and then run with that part of the conversation. But line 1 is going to be this, right? And I'm going to use 2. I use a speaker. I'm averaging about 2 seconds per line. So if I add 4 lines in here, then I'll just increment this up to, you know, from 2 to 4. That's kind of roughly how I'm kind of calculating this, because I've got a 1.5 second duration in, you know, on the item iterator in the UI. Not a stage queue, and I'm not going to be doing anything with any of this for the sake of this demo. And we come to line 3, and line 3, as far as the state machine, yeah, once we've done with rhyme 3, line 3 will go to line 4, and again that's a continue. And we can put a line in there, and again, since it's 1 line, I'm just going to keep it 2 seconds. And then on the exit, right here, we don't have a response. We're not going to broadcast a response ID. We're not going to respond to topic because we're just going to go ahead and exit. So I'm going to, yeah, so Manny's going to say his lines, and then he's going to tell everybody we're done talking. And everyone can, you know, he'll trigger the exit conversation, and everyone will exit out. Right, so that's Manny. So let's go ahead and set up Manny's topics table. So we're going to come back to the miscellaneous. I'm going to come to data tables, and I'm going to go to orator script topic row. So again, this is a generic table for both orator, Manny. So these are all the topics that Manny is interested in. So we'll just add those into the topics table. So, right now I'm going to give him 2. So he's interested in introductions, and he'll also be interested in the Apple's Quest. All right, so I've got introductions, Apple's Quest. So let's go ahead and hook these together. So Apple's Quest is pretty simple. We'll find Manny's Apple's Quest. There it is, orator Manny Apple Quest. So that'll be his dialogue, and I can kind of walk you through that a little bit later. And then this is the introduction, which we just created. Intro. And I'm just going to keep this as a conversation radius of 400. All right, so now that we've got that set up, let's finish it off with Quinn. So I'm going to come to the content drawer. Let's go find Quinn dialogs. So here I already created a dialogue for Quinn for the trader stuff, but we'll go ahead and create the dialogue for the other one, for the intro. So again, this is going to be an orator AI response table, so I'm going to hit OK. And from there, I'm just going to add, I think, 2 lines for Quinn. So she's going to do line 2. And she's also got line 4. And so with line 2, she's going to then cast to line 3. None, and continue, and let's give her a line. There it is. Oh, actually, we put that in line 4. So let's just clear this out real quick. This needs to go to line 3. Come on, select line 3. There we are. Line 3. Line 2 needs to go to line 3. And this one is going to go to line. All right, that's line 3. So line 2, just make sure you selected line 2. Goes to line 3 after we've said line 2. And then line 4, let's come back to line 4. And this is going to toss up to intro rhyme player, which is over here, this ID here. So Quinn's going to toss this up, and since I hold that ID, I will be the one continuing. And as you can see, it's a continue here. So I'm just going to delete that one. We'll put that in there. And then that's the second line of the verse. Again, 2 seconds. So each one's going to stay a line, and we're going to jump between both of those characters. So the way this is going to work is we're going to come up on introductions, right? Actually, let's go ahead and get that topics table as well. And then we'll circle back. Data table and orator topic script. Hit OK. Just going to give her 2. again, the first one, here it is, that's introductions, and introductions is going to go to Quinn intro, and this one will go to Quinn store. Again, top conversation, it's just 400 radius, so we're fine there. Don't need to adjust it. All right, so, and before I forget, let's go ahead and bring up Manny, and I'm going to bring up Quinn. All right, so with Manny, again, going into Orator, there's the Manny topics. Gonna hit come, and then with Quinn, go back to there and Quinn topics. All right, so everything should be wired up as far as the data is concerned. So we have the data, we have the functionality, everything's set up. So now we can kind of go into this a little bit more. So I'm going to close this. So the way this is going to work is if I bring up Manny, right? So if I come in, the way that I intend this to work is that we interact with Manny. He's going to run the topic and the rhyme line 1. So there it is. He's going to start there, which is then going to go to Manny line 1, and he should then speak. I'll pull up these lines that he wants to dialogue through, and then once the delay is finished, he'll then fire off. He'll broadcast this out to the group, and since Quinn is the one who's listening to it, she'll pick that up. She'll go ahead and she'll then let the group know that she's the one who's speaking. I'll pick that up and then show that in the UI, her line in the UI, and then after 2 seconds, she'll then send this out, which there is a cue for then Manny to then go to his line 3, and he'll then broadcast out that he's speaking. The player will pick it up and put this into the dialogue, and then he'll do his thing, and then he'll broadcast out right to line 4. Then Quinn finishes, right? She'll begin, and everyone, in which I'll then pick this up for her, and then she'll broadcast on end out. And since I'm listening to that one, I'll then go ahead and change the dialogue from speak to selection, and we'll pick these selections up. And if I select the I like lamb sandwiches, then that's the cue to start a new topic to go into, to start the quest dialogue, versus if I say intro, a-hole, exit, then that's pretty much going to say continue, right? I'm going to say I'm going to continue, which will then send this back to Manny, since Manny's now listening to that, to tell him to say, okay, well, exit. And of course, he's going to say his lines first, right? He's going to say, well, you're not a meat lover then, and after 2 seconds, he'll then broadcast the exit out to the group, and that will be the cue for everyone to then say, to drop the call and say we're done. On the other hand, if I do new topic for sales, then that will actually go to Quinn, and that will be her line, her cue to go into her sales stuff. So again, we have 2 topic switches. One would go to Quinn, one's going to go to Manny, and then the other one will go back to Manny, but tell him to end the conversation. All right, so that should do it for setting up the data. And again, so if you want to kind of take a look at what I'm doing with the conversation for the dialogue for the quest, again, it's a little bit more involved. There's just different steps. As you can see, we've got the apples quest, so that'll be the first thing that Manny wants to talk about. You could combine these 2 if you wanted to into 4 lines, but I decided to break it up. So I've got can you help me first, and then only if the player acknowledges will he go into a spiel. But if you wanted to kind of make things a little bit more concise, you could then just combine these 2 and just say, can you help with a task, and then So then you'd have 4 lines. And because I've got, since I have 3 lines here, I've made that 6 seconds. 4 lines, you might want to make that 7 or 8. It's up to you. Again, if I say no, I don't want to do it, then he'll just exit out. He'll say his lines and then exit out. Otherwise, if I say, yeah, I'll accept your request, then he's got a little bit more of some more dialogue before he then goes ahead and updates my quest log, saying with a new quest. If we're within the quest, he could go into my quest log and say, I've got an active quest that I'm interested, so he can start his dialogue here versus all the way back up at the intro. So again, you've got some flexibility there. So you could do that. If I say no, then he's going to say please hurry. And again, this you could be bouncing between this and this, which would then bounce you between. If I come back to dialogues and bring up the Orator's Apple quest, right, I can be bouncing between here based on the choices that I make down here. So again, he's conversing and I've got a bunch of choices here. And again, you can make you can add as many as you want if you want to have, yeah, depending on what you want to do. But since everything's going through IDs, it's really again a state machine working between multiple entities, so you can move between the states. There's really so it's not going down a decision tree. You're actually able to kind of go round in circles until you decide to come out, and that's kind of how that system's going to work. All right, so now that we've got this done, I think we're ready to kind of set things up. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this real quick, and we'll come back to the editor. I'll do one last compile. Alright, so now I think we can go ahead and set the stage. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm just going to go ahead and drag Manny out. And we will just rotate him, I think. And then I'll go and find Quinn. Rotate her. And I'll probably just bring her like that a little bit. Alright, so now we've got our actors and the player will just spawn in. We should be able to go down there, interact with Manny or Quinn and start the dialogues. So let's give this a whirl. Okay, so let's just fire this up. Ooh, looks like our camera is a little bit low, so we should fix that. I've got the debug turned on, and it looks like we're not colliding with our characters. So I've got a couple of issues here. So let's just go fix that real quick, so we can get the system working. So if I come back into our character, actually I can just pull this up here. So here's our blueprints. As far as the follow camera, I think it's a little low. It's kind of going into our characters behind. So let's just move this up. I'm going to move this up by 20, so that would come a little bit closer to our character's shoulder a little bit more. And do I have any other offsets? No, I think we're good. Alright, I think that should be good there. So, but then we also have a collision issue, and I'm just going to go turn this duration off. So right now everything's set to pawn, and as you can see, we're actually checking on the visible. So one option is that we could actually create a object type, and within that object type, we could set the character to that. So we could go from pawn to character mesh, right? Problem is we've got this, we're still checking on the visibility. So I'm just going to go to block all dynamic, which means that visibility will pull everything there. So what's going to happen is it will collide with anything it's going to, well, because it's block all dynamic, it's just going to turn all the collisions off there, and it's set to will dynamic object. And I'm going to do the same thing on the collision capsule for Manny as well. So I'm just going to say block all dynamic. And that just sets the visibility. Since we're checking on the visibility here, right, we're set visibility to here. This is the channel that we're checking on the line trace. So we need to make sure that whatever we're hitting, that just needs to be the same. All right, so with that all done, I think we're good. And I'm doing it on the collision capsule since that's the bigger target, versus doing it out here. We can still keep the character mesh as like this for now. If you needed something where you needed to ragdoll it and take the collision capsule off to ragdoll it, you'd probably want to then change this from character mesh to something else, probably block all dynamic again, and it should work. All right, so again, let's see what happens. We'll fire this up, and all right, we're a little still low. We just offset, so let's just make sure I get that correctly offset. How did I fix this? Actually, I think I just moved this up by 60, didn't I? Yep, there it is. So let's just go back to camera and so we offsetted it left a little bit, but I wanted to make sure I offset it high as well. So I'm going to come up to the camera boom, and I'm just going to go to 60. That should set that. All right, so that's right there, and it's slightly offset, so it looks like the camera is looking right over the shoulder. So let's try that again. All right, there we go. I've got an over the shoulder look. And then if I hit the E key, well, we're still not getting it. So let's see what's going on there. All right, so let's go ahead and bring up the editor and see what we can see. All right, so we have an E key, but it's not bringing things up. We have the collisions set on the capsule. For Manny, yep, that's block dynamic. We did that. Ooh, hang on. Yeah. So I think it's picking it up. Yeah. So what we're doing here is we need to have. I forgot to set the player to block dynamic. So if I was to bring up our code, so I'm just going to go ahead and just click on this guy real quick. We got Visual Studio. So part of what we do here is, don't need the orator component, but what I do need is, we'll bring in the AI. Demo AI, that's what we want. So one of the things here, right, so when we were doing the group, so I'm hitting Manny and Manny's going to start a group conversation. Problem is that I'm looking for world dynamics. So when we do our cast, everything here needs to be set to world dynamic. So if my character's set to pawn instead of world dynamic, then the object type will come out. So we could solve this a couple of ways. We could include the pawn, just add that in here. So if you want it to capture other types, then under object types we could just add additional types into this. But for this demo, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to come under capsule. It was pawn, so we'll just set this to block all dynamic, and then we should see this hopefully start to work. So now that everybody's set, let's get rid of that red as well while we're here. So if I come back to person, I'm going to take that from duration to none, since I kind of know that that's working now. Fire it up, so we've got that nice over the look. We're going to hopefully hit Miami, and there it is. Yeah, the UI could do with a little bit more work, but as you can see, it's running through between Manny and Quinn, and then we've got some things to choose from. But as you can see right now, I don't have control of my mouse, so let's go ahead and just fix that real quick. And I think that we will be done. So to fix that, I'm just going to come over here. So there's a couple of so to fix this, I'm just going to add some additional code. I'm just going to go bring both of these over from my other solution real quick. So usually I keep this code here in the player's controller, since that's the one that's controlling the UI. But I'm just going to drop it in here. So the first one is set UI mode. The second one is restore game mode. And the way that this works is, since I want to get control of the mouse and I want to set the game. So usually when I set this, I'm setting it to lock in full screen, and this is going to be input mode, game only. So again, this is a custom event that I've got. So we'll say set UI mode. It takes in a parameter to pause. Again, because I took this out of my one of my controllers. If I'm going into my inventory, then I want to set the game mode, but I also want to pause the game, right? So I don't want to get attacked. So if I'm opening up like inventory windows or character setup windows, things where I want to pause the game so that I can work within the UI and then reload the game. I can do that. But for this, I don't want to necessarily pause the game. I just want to get the cursor, but I need the game to keep on going. So I'm just going to add that in there, set UI mode. And I'm going to also add this to Quinn. Again, not great programming practice. Like I said, I usually keep this in the player controller, and that just acts as the player controller. But for now, just want to kind of get things moving for the demo. So I'm just going to go grab this. And again, the same idea. We're just going to go ahead and do this. And as far as the widget in focus, again, this doesn't know. Ideally, it would be better to pull this from the character, but for now, we're just going to pull it here. And then, because we're taking control and we're setting the we're going to want to do the restore game mode as well on the other side. But I only want to do restore game mode from exit conversation. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and do this off all of the exits. We don't need to do it off the new topic. If I'm not part of the new topic, then it will tell me to just exit there. That's in Quinn, and we can do the same thing for Manny. Again, just to kind of clean it up a little bit. That should restore that, and let's just jump right in. Let's go over to the UI widget. So that was in the speak. So what is it? That border, this border. I think, you know what, we'll just leave it for now. Alright, so let's just go ahead and run this again real quick, and hopefully we'll get the mouse control. So if I hit this, there we go, got my mouse. I'll try it dead. Now go to school with her. 20 chunks of bread. Yeah, it looks like somehow that border's not getting coming through. And then I can make my choices. I like lamb sandwiches, so or I can just do this, and there you go, and it exits out, and I get control of my mouse again. And I can go to Gwen. Hi there, how can I help you today? I'm not interested, so we'll do that. All right, so everything looks like it's working, and our dialogue, with some just minor fixes to the dialogue window, everything is working, kind of like how the demo was. So, all right, so that should do it for this dialogue series. So as always, if you like what I'm doing, feel free to like and share my videos, as well as subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, bye.